Hello, dear friends. Today is September 14th, 2025, and this is the traditional review of the battlefield map. Today is Sunday, and not many updates are coming from the front line or about changes, but some adjustments along the line of contact have taken place. The main developments continue to occur on the South Donetsk, the so-called Dnipropetrovsk direction. There are also updates on the Pokrovsk direction, the Konstantinovka direction, and the Krasny Lyman direction. News is also coming in from Kupyansk and from the Sumy direction, which we will discuss and take a look at in this video. And before we begin, as always, I sincerely ask you to subscribe to the channel. Your subscription helps the channel grow tremendously. Thank you to everyone who has subscribed. Let's move on to the Orakov direction. Heavy fighting continues here in the area of the settlement of Stepnogorsk and in the area of the settlement of Malaya Tokmachka. Let's start with Stepnogorsk. Reports indicate that Russian troops are trying to secure positions on the southern outskirts of this settlement, but they are failing. A large number of Ukrainian FPV drone teams are operating here, preventing the Russian army from advancing. Despite the fact that Russian forces have already taken this residential district with high-rise buildings, they are not able to hold on in the southern part. Some sources report that assault groups have already entrenched on the southern edge, while others deny this information, claiming that heavy battles are still ongoing there. What is really happening, we will find out in the coming days. As soon as confirming footage appears, I will update the map and tell you everything in detail. Now to Malaya Tokmachka. Here, Russian positions were attacked again in the same Novopokrovka, and Ukrainian positions were also attacked in Malaya Tokmachka itself. Fierce battles are taking place here daily. Russian positions were also attacked in the area of Belogoria. Let me remind you that most of Belogoria is currently under Ukrainian control. The central part may remain a grey zone, but the majority is held by Ukraine. Russian forces are present on the outskirts, and they were hit with FPV drones. That's the news from here for today. Moving on to the South Donetsk direction, which is now being called the Dnipropetrovsk direction. A strike was recorded in the area of the settlement of Uspinovka. Let me remind you that there were strikes here yesterday, the day before yesterday, and today as well, carried out by Russian aviation. It is likely that these frequent strikes are targeting Ukrainian temporary deployment points. As for Russian army advances, as you know, earlier Russian troops took Sosnovka and are moving toward the settlement of Aristopol, located here. There is also information that Turnovo has come fully under Russian control. We talked about this yesterday. Today more data arrived. Some of it came yesterday, but I didn't have time to update the map. Today, reports confirmed Russian flags being raised in 3 separate locations. All of this territory, marked in red, has come fully under Russian control. The advance here amounted to up to 1 kilometer deep into the front line. Reports also state that active assault operations are underway in the settlement of Beryozovo. Russian troops have entered from the northern outskirts and are also pressing from the southern and eastern sides. At the same time, Russian forces were hit by FPV drone attacks in the area of the settlement of Zaporizhzhia. Regarding the settlement of Kalinovskoye, there were multiple FAB airstrikes, and reports now suggest that Russian troops have entrenched themselves on the southern outskirts, possibly already beginning assault operations. Once confirming video footage appears of Russian advances in Kalinovskoye, I will update the map and explain everything in detail. Let's move further along the map. In the area of Novoselka, there are some small clarifications coming from the Ukrainian side. The Ukrainian side in this sector acknowledged the loss of this section of the front line, as well as the area south of Seknevo. These sections, marked in red, are recognized by Ukraine as lost. In reality, the zone of control looks like this. The entire area marked in red is under Russian control. Multiple confirmations of this were provided earlier by pro-Russian sources and Russian side reports. Thus, the line of contact looks like this. Now on to the Pokrovsk direction. Here, changes have been reported near the settlement of Shakovo. As you know, yesterday we mentioned that Russian troops had been pushed back in the area of the settlement of Vladimirovka. Ukrainian forces counterattacked Russian positions here, managed to push them back slightly, and now Vladimirovka is under Ukrainian armed forces control. Charkovo and Sofiivka are also under Ukrainian control. But today, a video emerged from this area. Russian troops advanced by about 1 kilometer towards Sofiivka. We had already noted earlier that attacks were ongoing on Sofiivka, on Charkovo, and on Vladimirovka. For now, Ukraine has managed to stabilize the front line in the Vladimirovka sector. But in the coming days, if Russian troops break through Ukrainian defenses towards Sofiivka, the supply route here will effectively be cut off, and both Charkovo and Vladimirovka could fall under Russian control. Russian forces also continue attacks on the settlements of Volnoye and Stepi. Reports today stated that heavy fighting is taking place near Volnoye. If Ukraine loses Volnoye, it will certainly lose Stepi as well. That would considerably widen the front line here. That is the situation for today. Now let's move to the Konstantinovka direction. Here, there are changes in Shcherbinovka. Today, data arrived from this settlement. Most of Shcherbinovka has already been cleared. This pocket was cleared today, or possibly earlier, but today confirmation came in. This territory, marked in red, has fully come under Russian control. Thus, we can note that most of Shcherbinovka is already in Russian hands, and it is likely that the remaining part is also being cleared. In fact, not just likely, it is already being cleared. In the coming days, the map will be updated to reflect this in favor of the Russian army. It was also reported that Russian positions to the west of Novospassky, in these tree lines, came under attack. Russian positions here were hit. Thus, we can conclude that active clearing of this entire area is underway. Katerinivka has also come under Russian control. We already know that Russian flags have been raised there multiple times, and video footage confirmed the presence of Russian forces. As for Klebanbaik, the situation remains unclear. Let me remind you that earlier the Russian Ministry of Defense claimed Klebanbaik had fully come under Russian control, but this information has not been confirmed. Once we receive video evidence of control over this settlement, I will update the map. Naturally, once Russian troops take Klebanbaik, this entire area will also shift under Russian control. Let's move further to the Siversk direction, since there were no updates today from the Chasov Yar area. Reports indicate that heavy battles are ongoing near Predtichino, Stupochki, and the settlement of Maiskoye. As you know, Russian forces are currently storming the southern part of Predtichino, entering the settlement from the south. In the coming days, we also expect advances here by the Russian armed forces. On the Siversk direction itself, reports say Russian positions were attacked near the settlements of Serebryanka and Grigorovka. Let me remind you, Russian troops have already taken full control of Serebryanka and are holding it firmly. They are also moving toward Dronovka, but no significant progress has been observed so far. However, repeated reports indicate that Russian troops are advancing toward Dronovka, expanding their zone of control, while Dronovka itself is being hit from the Serebryansky forest by Russian FPV drone teams. So far, no major changes are recorded here. Ukrainian positions inside Siversk itself were attacked. Heavy fighting is also taking place north of the settlement of Perezhnoye and in the area of Vyemka. That's the situation here for today. Let's move to the Krasny Liman direction. As you know, Zarekhnoe has already come under Russian control, but we have not yet received confirming information from the southern part. Once we do, I will update the map. But changes have been recorded in this sector of the fighting. Yesterday we mentioned that Russian troops were advancing toward the settlement of Stavki and expanding their zone of control in that direction. Today confirming material has arrived. From this point, Russian positions were established, and Russian forces managed to advance 700 meters, with all of the territory marked in red shifting under Russian control. Strikes were also recorded in the area of Liman. These were mainly FAB strikes on Ukrainian positions carried out by Russian aviation. Elsewhere, positional battles continue near Redkodub, Karpovka, Novomikhailovka, and also in the area of the settlement of Grekovka, without any significant map changes. Now let's move to Kupyansk. In the Kupyansk area, Russian forces attacked Ukrainian positions at this point. An FPV drone strike was carried out here, and a Ukrainian armored vehicle was destroyed. At the same time, we can note that Ukraine continues to firmly control this whole section, and Russian forces have failed to advance toward this industrial zone. Also, the map was updated in this spot. New confirming information showed the presence of Ukrainian forces here. Thus, a previously marked area in favor of Russian forces has now been repainted in favor of the Ukrainian armed forces. Earlier, Russian positions were observed here, possibly reconnaissance or sabotage groups, which were targeted by a Ukrainian tank. But this territory was not fully cleared for a long time. Today, however, data confirmed that the entire area has been completely cleared, with no Russian presence remaining. Heavy fighting is also ongoing on the northern outskirts of Kupyansk. Many in the comments ask why I don't talk about the pipeline through which Russian troops advanced into this settlement. You can read about this pipeline in other news sources since it didn't create any major breakthrough. That's why I haven't covered it. That's the update from here. Moving further along the map, in the Volchansk area, heavy battles continue without either side making gains. Let me remind you that here every day fierce clashes take place without either side advancing. The only progress in recent weeks was in this section, where Russian ICHI's troops crossed the Seversky Donets River and entrenched themselves in the forested areas west of Volchansk. There have also been repeated reports that Russian forces are advancing within this forest, but no confirming information about an expanded zone of control has yet been received. As for the Liptsy direction, positional fighting continues here, with no new updates. Now to the Sumy direction. In this sector, Ukrainian forces attacked Russian positions in Yunakovka using FPV drones. Ukrainian troops are not launching a full offensive on Yunakovka, but they are trying to slow down the Russian advance in this area and are preventing free movement even within Yunakovka itself. Let me remind you that earlier battles were fought house by house. Now reports say active fighting is taking place in the forests near the settlement of Sadki. Possibly in the coming days, confirming footage will appear and the map will be updated since there have been multiple news reports claiming this sector is now under Russian control. As for the settlement of Alexivka, Ukrainian troops have failed to capture it. Multiple assaults were carried out, but Ukrainian assault groups suffered enormous losses. Russian sources report that Ukraine lost up to 80% of their personnel in these attacks, achieving no results. The only section where fighting brought changes was this territory, which shifted under Ukrainian control. Possibly it has already returned under Russian control, but for now no major changes are confirmed. Regarding the settlement of Tyotkino, all fighting here has turned positional. Neither Russian nor Ukrainian forces are advancing, and FPV drone activity has decreased. If earlier FPV drones and artillery were used daily on both sides, now the front line here is more or less stable. That's the situation for today. Thank you all for watching. See you next time.